Kuides, which is, of course, Albanian for Achtung, Achtung. Some of you may well have seen a show called Wife Swap on TV, which wasn't exactly as advertised. Well, last week, We Have Ways of Making You Talk took a giddy step in this direction. James and I discussed the likely outcome if the Germans had fought on behalf of the Japanese in Asia, while the Japanese defended Normandy against the invading allies. It was fascinating and utterly ridiculous.
It was.
Yes, if you've come to the right place, ladies and gentlemen. That's the kind of nonsense you get served up in this podcast. If you like your history safe and sensible, look elsewhere. Right, down to business. If you're downloading this podcast in the week we send it kicking and screaming into the world, then it's a very significant moment in time. 75 years ago this very week, a battle was being fought for the beating heart of La France. The Allied forces began the liberation of Paris on the 19th of August 44, the German garrison surrendering just 6 days later on the 25th. Now, Giacomo Orlando is with me as ever. That, by the way, is Italian for James Holland. Well, let's talk about Paris, Giacomo, shall we? I mean,
but Paris and the end of the Normandy campaign, which was saw some of the most horrific scenes of any fighting anywhere in the Second World War, I would argue.
Because after all, the 19th is before the Battle of Falaise Gap ends, which I think ends on the 21st.
21st, yeah. 77 days of the Normandy campaign finally over. And it is absolutely horrific in that corridor of death, as it becomes known. So bad that in sort of Laurent-sur-Dive and Chambois and all these sort of places, and Moissy, this little ford that they cross, people can't live there for about 3 years because the flies are so thick in the summertime, and it's just horrendous. I mean, absolutely horrific. The photos that you can see that were taken by the Allies at the end of that absolute carnage are totally horrific.
Well, there's that famous picture, isn't it, up the road at Montormel where the Poles fought their last stand, where there's knocked out vehicles, and I think there's a knocked out Panther, isn't there? And that road is thick with dead horses and dead men. Because after all, the Germans are largely horse-drawn as well. So you've got that too. And I remember talking to a Typhoon pilot who was part of the sort of rolling cab rank of airstrikes on the German traffic jam. You could smell it in your plane. Yeah. Thousands of feet up in the sky, the putrefying flesh and the burning flesh as well. So it's an ugly end to the Normandy campaign, isn't it? With the German army trapped.
It really is, and they're just absolutely slaughtered. You know, it's Allied guns all zeroed in on those roads, Allied fighters just coming in and strafing them. And although, rocket firing Typhoon is unlikely to knock out a Panther tank, the Panther can't move because in front of it and behind it and either side of it is absolutely completely shot up. I mean, really, really shocking pictures of carnage. And someone has actually done and worked out exactly the entire detail of the corridor of death and all those different roads and what has been shot out where. And it's forensic, that kind of sort of forensic detailed work that kind of serious World War II geeks do. And thank goodness they do it. But it is absolutely fascinating and horrific in equal measure. I mean, you just can't help but be sickened and appalled and overawed by what happened. Yeah.
A friend of mine has a holiday home near Chambois, and she says they find stuff in the garden all the time.
I can well imagine it.
Fragments and bits and pieces of stuff.
But the two German armies that are fighting in Normandy just completely implode. I mean, out of 2,500 armoured fighting vehicles that the Germans have in Normandy, like 24 barely get away. Hardly anyone does, and they just scarper across the Seine as quickly as they possibly can. And Paris is kind of effectively open. And then, of course, there is this big moment where von Choltitz, who has been sent to take over the control of Paris from I think it's Stuttnagel, because he's an ardent Nazi and is going to do what the Führer says, doesn't do what the Führer says, because the Führer says blow up Paris and destroy it before the Allies get to it, and he doesn't.
Yeah, but the interesting thing, isn't it, is that Eisenhower didn't have Paris on his shopping list really at all. The Overlord mission is to trap and destroy the German forces, and Paris is seen as not a worthwhile military target, is it? It's a political target, but not a military one, because you don't want to get involved in a great big battle in a city like Stalingrad or Leningrad, a siege like that.
Absolutely
you don't want
not.
that. You don't want that to happen.
No.
So what you're there to do is annihilate the German army. So it's quite interesting then that it's Patton, isn't it, who isn't necessarily occupied in the heavy lifting of Falaise, and he's gone round underneath. Underneath the pocket, first he breaks west, and then he breaks east, Le Mans comes in under the main Normandy action.
Yeah. And he sort of swings around and eventually comes directly from the south.
Exactly, and it's Garau's division, isn't it? That Leclerc army that Leclerc is part of as well.
Yes, I think it's the second armoured division, isn't it? Because the first armour's been destroyed back on the 15th, 16th of May, 1940, and so Leclerc is Tassigny, isn't he? Is his real name? He is he's the commander of the second armoured division, which is completely equipped by the Americans.
Yeah,
and they're the guys who, when they arrive in England to train, they're settled outside York, and the first thing they do is hold a memorial service in honour of Joan of Arc, having been hosted by the British. It's really, 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 really tactful. It's just really hilarious.
But the interesting thing, though, isn't it? Is in June in Italy, Mark Clark goes for Rome. You have the drama of him going for Rome, taking Rome, and putting military policemen on the roads to Rome to stop the British getting involved in taking Rome, and all that stuff.
Yeah,
and the Germans get away. So you can see why Eisenhower, you see that happen, that Eisenhower's saying, no, we're not going for Paris. Our job is to do maximum damage to the German army in France. And then people take matters into their own hands.
Yeah, exactly. And there is street fighting in Paris, and there is some, suddenly everyone's a resistor and everything. And dramatic stuff. I don't think the description of the fall of Paris has ever been equalled better than that book that was written in the 60s called Is Paris Burning? I don't know if you've ever read it. I think it's sort of quite a lot of it has been kind of over dramatized. It's very much in the tradition of Cornelius Ryan. It's very kind of first person led, lots of kind of personal stories. You're right. It's sort of you're following the cast list of people, but it's utterly compelling story about the fall of about the liberation of Paris, and it's just completely gripping. It's by two guys, an Israeli guy, I think it is, or maybe it's a Frenchman and an American. I can't remember, but they did a whole series of books. But Is Paris Burning is the most famous one, and if anyone gets a chance to read it, it's great.
Von Choltitz in his autobiography said, "Yes, I disobeyed the order. Yes, I didn't destroy Paris. I saved Paris." Is that true, or was he caught with his trousers down? Did he not actually do the necessary preparation to destroy Paris? What really happened? Because obviously, if I were in his situation, I'd claim credit. I'd go, yeah, absolutely. Paris is still standing because of me. That's the reason there's still an Eiffel Tower and so on. Or was it actually that he got caught out by events?
I think he did make a conscious decision not to destroy it. I really do. I think I think we can give him that credit, but being a Nazi general and saying I disobeyed Hitler, I don't know. I don't give him that much kudos for that, to be honest. I mean, well done, mate. When the city is surrounded by allies, what do you do? Do you do as ordered by the Führer, who is in the Wolf's Lair in Rastenburg in East Prussia, or do you do what is likely to make you looked upon slightly more kindly by the Allies when they catch you imminently, having surrounded the entire city? I know what I'd do. The greatest respect to Von Choltitz.
But am I right in thinking the first company of French soldiers into Paris was actually made up of mainly Spanish Republicans?
Yeah, I love that story. I am desperately trying to find. I've put out various feelers. I really want to find an eyewitness testimony, a detailed eyewitness testimony of a Spaniard who was fighting with the French, the FEC, from southern France upwards.
It was the sixth company of I can't remember. And
they were all part of Patch's 7th Army as well. There were a whole load of Spaniards in that, and I really want to read the perspective of a Spaniard fighting in the Second World War on the part of the French, on the part of the Allies. I think that'd just be so interesting. It must exist. There must be a diary, a memoir, a long lost account somewhere, but I've yet to find it.
Because the Spanish involvement wasn't honoured until quite recently, was it, by the French government? Because it's also embarrassing that the post-war politics around that, isn't it?
Well, it's just the whole of France's legacy in the Second World War is really embarrassing and awkward and poses all sorts of difficult questions that no one wants to answer. I mean, you now have to sort of go President Mitterrand, don't you, rather than sort of go, President Mitterrand. I mean, there's all sorts of dodgy stuff, and The occupation was not a time of great glory for the French. It has to be said, with the best will in the world. I mean, obviously there were always resistors and some incredibly brave men, but it's so nuanced. I mean, I think that's what's still so captivating about it, isn't it? French resistance and stuff, and who was doing what, and why would you join one side, and what are you trying to do, and how are you trying to just sort of keep your head down and stuff. But what a terrible time.
And of course, after the event, what would you say?
Yeah. But I mean, you and I have been lucky enough never to live through a civil war. But I mean, once the firing stopped and the kind of peace treaty's been signed, what happens to those villages when you know that, 5 years ago you were all living side by side quite happily, and now you suddenly find yourself, with neighbours who were on the other side during the war? I mean, how do you just move on? I mean, what do? Do you up sticks and move to Australia, or I don't know? I mean, but it must be so difficult. And you just there's that. But you must. There's that amazing series called The Pity and the Sorrow. That documentary that was made in the late 1960s, and I think it was banned in France until about 1995 or something, because it was just too contentious.
Yeah. But it's not a surprise when you look at pre-war French politics, which is this sort of completely anarchic, governments collapsing endlessly, popular fronts, Poujadists.
Yeah. Coalitions of 12 different parties.
Exactly, and fascists and communists and counter-revolutionary and post-revolutionary, all this stuff in the jumble. So that when the Germans come in and take over, you got people quite clearly either thinking, well, they're here to stay, so I need to resolve myself to it, or yes, I agree with an awful lot of what they say, which was clearly what happened, and then obviously people thinking, well, this isn't going to last forever, I'm going to hedge my bets. I mean, it's so fascinating. I mean, the thing I think is amazing is that even Leclerc's victory parade, through the Arc de Triomphe, all those famous pictures, there were still German snipers in the city shooting at the crowds and stuff. I mean, it's
why would you do that?
Well, why would you do that? Because you surely think, well,
I'll melt into the suburbs.
Yeah, I'll melt into the suburbs in my field grey. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. Or I'll go back to my girlfriend's house and put my civvies on.
Yeah,
I mean,
put my civvies and stay in the garret for a while.
It's just crazy. And obviously, word would reach, like you say, the wolf's lair, and Hitler would go, excellent, my men are still resisting. But whatever. I mean, it's so strange, isn't it? And what's interesting, I mean, you can see why that might also then have fueled at the end, because we talked a lot last week about the end of the war. Why at the end of the war you had this worry about werewolf resistance and pockets of Nazi resistance and all that sort of thing post-war, that maybe in Paris the snipers put that idea in people's heads that they're not going to give up when they're plainly beat, even when they've actually surrendered.
Yeah, and it's snipers. There's nothing like a sniper to kind of really put the fear of God into an awful lot of people, because if you just don't feel safe to walk across the Place de la Concorde or whatever it might be, that's just putting an incredible sort of state of fear and anxiety on an entire city, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But so that was 75 years ago this week. But I mean, I think what's interesting is this is concurrent with the Falaise battle, is that business, like we said right at the start of this, business is not yet concluded in Normandy, and then the great chase to chase the Germans over the Seine and then over the Somme is now on. This is 21st of August, starters orders basically, to get to Brussels, to get to Antwerp, to get into Belgium, and it's that great chase that then follows. And so Paris, in a way, is arguably it's a good thing politically, but it's not the point. It's not the main event going on right at this minute.
No, the main point is to chase the Germans as quickly as possible and follow up as quickly as possible, and they do go with incredible speed. I remember, the Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry, which I've mentioned before. I mean, what's interesting from Stanley Christopherson's diaries, and he's the commanding officer of the Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry. Yeah, it's on. I think it is the 22nd of August, they form themselves into a battle group with motorised infantry and motorised artillery, and off they go. And one of the things I thought was really, really interesting about that is everyone sort of goes, wow, the amazing tactical flexibility of the Germans, because they can organise themselves into battle groups just like that with the click of their fingers. But actually, by the 22nd of August, so can our guys too. I mean, if you need to do it, you do it. If you've got to exploit, that is an all-arms motorised unit of tanks, artillery and infantry, which is hurtling northwards into Belgium.
But that's the difference. 2.5 months of fighting the Germans in Normandy is done to Second Army Group, isn't it? And Second Armies. That basically they're now super experienced. They now know how to integrate. They've figured it out. This is the thing they've learned since D-Day. They've learned how to integrate. They've shaken down how infantry and armour cooperate and how artillery is integral to that, and how you work in 3 dimensions, and you've got your cab rank fighter, tactical fighter thing. And this is the fruit of the Normandy campaign is that actually you've got an army that can exploit in full British Blitzkrieg, Britskrieg, if you want to call it that, fashion.
Yeah, nice.
It's all right, isn't it? All the way to the Dutch border.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's this sort of thing, isn't there? That the Germans break out, and then there's 6 weeks campaigning in France in 1940, because there's the Somme battle after Dunkirk. There's still that big battle outside Paris. That never gets
mentioned, does it?
And the French fight in these big hedgehogs and slow the Germans down. It's an appalling attritional thing, but the Germans still win. But then you've got what you've got in Normandy is you've got basically 8-10 weeks of campaigning, and then a big breakout, and it's it's kind of the same thing in reverse. Arguably.
Well, yeah, and exactly, and it's kind of the criticism of the British and indeed, the Allies per se in Normandy is that they're slow and stodgy and all the rest of it. But there are plenty of opportunities within the Normandy campaign where you can see them exploiting with speed and in all arms units. And Operation Blowcoat, right at the end of July, beginning of August, is a classic example of that, where Second Army is unleashed and off they go, and they do really, really well. And of course, post Cobra as well for the Americans, they suddenly go absolutely hell for leather, and you're seeing the same at the end of the Normandy campaign. So this kind of sort of tarring the Allies with the same brush of being kind of slow and stodgy, and the Germans all being kind of tactically versatile is absolute bollocks.
Well, yeah, it doesn't. It certainly doesn't add up. Now,
anyway,
so there we go. That's the liberation of Paris ahead of schedule, of course.
Yes,
exactly. Day 90 on the phase lines.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
77 in reality. So nearly 2 weeks quicker than anticipated.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. It's time for a short break, but before we do, can I just thank whichever of our listeners has just been on holiday to the small Italian town of Biella in Piedmont. Is it Piedmont? Piedmont, okay. Whoever it was listened to 15 episodes of We Have Ways this week. It's like we were on holiday with you. I mean,
that's extraordinary. Good effort.
How relaxing is that? Hold that thought, back in a jiffy. Welcome back to We Have Ways of Making You Talk. I mentioned in the last episode that we're planning to bring you a daily podcast during the 9 days of Operation Market Garden, September 17th to the 25th. It's 75 years since the famous airborne operation, and we'll be looking at the battle from all aspects, which should hopefully provide plenty of talking points. And if there's one battle that people like to talk about, it's the Battle of Arnhem, let's be honest now. But now, let's get
we
stuck.
do anyway.
Well, I think an awful lot of people do. Let's get stuck into your questions. Some crackers on Twitter. Remember the hashtag We Have Ways. Now, of course, here we go. Last week, of course, we did emails brought to us by the old, which has led to someone on the email going, I am not old, I just don't like Twitter. No, you're old. Simple as that. Right. So Ben Ross asks, hi guys, I'm really loving the podcast, and I think it would make a great TV programme. Well, we could always set up a camera in my kitchen.
Yeah, when you go to Arnhem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, I was wondering if you think there are any big bits of information still to emerge about World War II, which is still classified as secret. Or has everything been released by the Allied governments and we know more or less everything? Thanks, Ben. Well, I think you can break this question up because I think there are obviously some things that are still classified secret. Some of them might be big. Some of them might be things that confirm things that you heavily suspect. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe locked away in a vault somewhere, there's Churchill knowing perfectly well that there is going to be no invasion. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think there is quite a lot. I think there's also, there is just so much paperwork from the Second World War. There's lots of stuff that it's not that it hasn't been declassified; it's just that it hasn't been discovered. I mean, it's particularly noticeable. I would say, when I've been to Freiburg, for example, which is where the German National Military Archives are sent, down in the Schwarzwald and the Black Forest, and it's amazing. And you can always tell when someone hasn't looked at a big file for an awful long time. And I remember looking at some German documents, and you get these big files and there's dust on them, and the paper's stuck together, and the little staple or paper clip has gone rusty, and you just know that no one has looked at this from certainly not since 1953, but probably not since 1945. And you're looking at it for the first time in many, 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 many years, and that no one has ever written about this in a book or mentioned it on a TV program or not. And that's quite exciting. But I think there's one big thing which I know hasn't been declassified. Obviously, there is the Rudolf Hess stuff. That hasn't. Nor has all the stuff on the Duke of Windsor. No. And the other one is the mafia, and the mafia's involvement in the Allied invasion of Sicily, which is something I'm looking into right now, and it is really, really fascinating.
Careful, James. Careful. We don't want you in. I don't want you in a concrete overcoat at the butt.
You're not showing me enough respect. Yeah, but it is, there's absolutely no question that the mafia was pretty much, it wasn't dead and buried, but it was certainly kind of on the almost dead side of dormant by 1943. That Mussolini's Italy had really, really clamped down hard on the mafia. But Don Carlo Vizzini was still kind of, the senior Don in Sicily at the time, and he was absolutely, without question, in negotiation with the Allies, particularly through Italian Americans who were kind of in New York, who were kind of coming over from the dark side to support the Allies. And deals were struck. What we don't know is the absolute details of it, but we know that Vito Genovese was involved, who was a guy who was, basically was done for murder and fled back to Sicily. We know that Lucky Luciano was involved. Some really bad people involved in it. And we also know that there is just beyond doubt that when Patton's guys kind of started moving west towards Palermo, it was unbelievably easy, and the Italians were the largely Sicilian coastal naval troops were just laying down their arms in droves, and they were encouraged to do so by the mafia.
What? So this is the suggestion: the mafia were bought off, or the mafia were told you can have Sicily when the de facto government.
You help us, and then
you scratch our back.
We'll scratch yours. And there is also no question that due to the Second World War, the mafia is now, rose again after the Second World War. Whether it would have done without the Allies' help or not is to be confirmed or to be discussed. But they certainly were kind of pretty much finished beforehand, and they certainly have been ever stronger ever since.
Because it was a big part of the Mussolini government's selling point that they dealt with the mafia, wasn't it?
They really did.
And they really, really did. They really did clamp down on a gangster state, you could argue. Getting rid of another gang, as it were. But they did make it. They were tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime.
They absolutely were.
To coin a more recently used phrase. I mean, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because the Allies arriving, you can see that if you're letting the mafia, that's a heck of a genie you're letting out of the bottle, isn't it?
Yeah, really, really is. And Don Carlo, who was this, I mean, even by the Second World War, I think he was in his late 60s. He was a kind of short little guy, used to wear shirts with no tie, with no sleeves, so sort of, short sleeve shirts, and never wore a jacket, and had a massive paunch, and had his trousers with his braces right up to kind of, above his belly button, little round glasses, looked really kind of. Yeah, he didn't look like. Well, I suppose he did look like a Don. I don't know, but he looked very kind of sort of undynamic, but was this absolute firebrand. And he rode on the back of a Sherman tank into Palermo. It's absolutely amazing scenes, amazing story. But after that, then corruption started coming in really big, because the guy who was made the first American Allied military government a governor of Palermo is a chap called Charles Paletti, and he was also a total badass, and he very, very quickly got under the thumb of Vito Genovese. He was like an out and out crook. I mean, he was a bandit, a gangster in the USA, fled back to Sicily, inveigled his way back into the Allies. Yeah, I know all these people. Trust me, I can do up a deal and all this kind of stuff. And, I can be a translator for you. All the while kind of absolutely just cornering the black market.
Yeah.
With bungs to Charles Paletti. Paletti later in the war becomes governor of Naples. And Vito Genovese then runs this massive racket all around Naples.
So where will you find the classified documents about this? Is this going to be an American?
Yeah, it is.
Some American record vault or the FBI or,
Yeah, I think they are held by NARA, which is the National Archives and Records Administration. It's equivalent of the kind of National Archives in the UK, or the PROs, it used to be called. They're there somewhere. It's just they haven't been declassified. But I'm going to have a really good squirrel around in Kew, actually, because which is the National Archives over in the UK, because I reckon there's all sorts of stuff in there, and lots of stuff has been declassified. I just know that the officially the mafia stuff hasn't been declassified, but I reckon there might be kind of hints and leaks and kind of little bits of stuff one can piece together.
Might there not be concerned letters back to London saying
all that kind of stuff? Yeah,
our chap in Palermo going, you won't believe what's going on.
Yeah,
we were trying to do a deal with the communists, and they've got the mafia involved. Because that's what it'll be all about, all the competing factions as much as anything else.
Exactly that. The mafia. One of the things they were talking about was becoming independent of the rest of Sicily and becoming a part of Britain, actually becoming a protectorate of Britain or protectorate of the United States or something. I mean, that kind of language is being talked about. I just think all that is just so fascinating because it's kind of sort of it's the dark side sort of stuff, isn't it?
But Sicily had been a protectorate of Britain. Nelson was governor of Sicily wasn't he? Because of the lime juice out of Sicily, incredibly important to the Royal Navy in a previous similar global conflict. Now, the other thing we were talking about Paris earlier on is after am I right in thinking and corruption? After the liberation of Paris, am I right in thinking that basically the American Quartermaster General set up in the Georges V Hotel, or one of the big swanky hotels in Paris, and basically lived the absolute life of lobster luxury.
Yes, I can't remember. Was he General Lee or something like that?
It's something like that. And he was absolutely some lieutenant general, quartermaster general of the American army, totally bent.
Yes,
and like the utterly corrupt.
Yeah. Totally.
And running a great big fucking racket, and just amazing. And that, a whole other side to things that when you're talking that if you came to this via band of brothers with sort of noble flags and solo trumpets playing as we nobly remember the greatest generation, there's also all the other people at the other end of the supply chain filling their boots and smoking cigars in silk pajamas, eating lobster in Paris.
Well, this is one. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And Charles Paletti falls under exactly the same category. Governor of first of all of Palermo, then of Naples, which is the big E, and he's just as bent as they come. I mean, he's so corrupt, it's not true. And this is what Keith Lowe's been writing about, and I think it's called The Fear and the Loathing or something like that. The Fear and the Freedom. I can't remember. A book he wrote about the immediate aftermath of the Second World War and how we look upon the Second World War. Yeah. And how today, anyone who was anything to do with the Second World War is a complete hero.
He's a hero.
Pointing out that not everyone was. I mean, lots of people were complete cowards and absolutely useless and really didn't contribute a lot.
Yeah.
And those guys absolutely worked in the adverse. So that if I was looking for kind of really good documents that still need to be unclassified. I mean, I don't really care about whether Mountbatten was gay or something. I mean, that's been kind of about for ages. So what? But
there's also no way. There's also no way of actually ever knowing that. Whereas if there's a document that is signed off by Hoover saying, we let's do it for the sake of the war. Let's do a deal with the mafia. I mean, bingo, amazing. I mean, you're not going to find that, but you never know.
You never know.
Never know. Right, okay. Now, Ian Holloway asks, we have Ways podcast up to the usual high standard. We've only done 21 and we already have a usual high standard.
That's
James.
good.
How about that?
That's very good.
We hear a lot about U-boats, but very little about Allied submarines. How effective were they? Keep it up, highlight of my Wednesday morning.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think Allied submariners were incredibly successful. I mean, actually, the Royal Navy had more submarines rather than U-boats than the Germans had U-boats in 1939, which is, a lot of people know that, and were absolutely vital in the, in the Mediterranean. I mean, they played an absolute crucial role. I mean, the 10th submarine flotilla operating out of Malta was sinking legendary numbers of Axis shipping, and actually HMS Upholder was the most successful Allied submarine of the entire war in terms of tonnage sunk. I think it sunk something like 128,000 tons worth of Axis shipping. And actually the commander of HMS Upholder was a chap called Lieutenant Commander David Wanklin, known to his friends as Wanks, obviously. Right. Whether he did or not, who knows? But he was married, and he was a very, very great man. I knew his number one, his second in command, a chap called Tubby Crawford. He was just the loveliest bloke ever. I mean, he was completely amazing. Anyway, there was very, very famously in May 1941, they sank the Conti Rosso, which was an 18,000-ton troop ship with pretty much all hands on deck lost, and they did this by going. Their ASDIC was out of was on the blink, which was effectively their sonar. And they sunk the Conti Rosso by going underneath the destroyer escort screen, getting within an inch of the Conti Rosso and basically shooting it at point blank range. They were then depth charged 38 times. And I do remember asking Tubby, I was saying, God, that must have been pretty hairy. And he said, well, the boat would shake around a little bit and bits of caulking would be coming on your head and stuff. And yes, it was a little bit hairy.
God.
But anyway, but he got a DSC for that, but Wanklin got a VC for that action. Right. And there's this brilliant bit in the Times of Malta kept going every single day of the entire siege of Malta, throughout every single day of the war. And there's this bit in December 1941 where the announcement comes out, and they interview him, and they said, so we asked Lieutenant Commander Wanklin if there was one word with which he could that he thought best described the characteristics needed to be a successful submariner. And it said, Lieutenant Commander Wanklin carefully stroked his beard for a moment and then turned to us and said, imperturbability. Amazing. So Tubby then got sent home to do his perisher, do his submarine commander course and return to the Mediterranean on HMS Unseen. And Upholder, at the height of the siege of Malta in the kind of spring of 1942, was having this terrible time. And they were on their they left port in Valletta, Marsamuset Harbour, on something like the 20th of April 1942, and they were going to do one more combat mission and then head off to Gibraltar and then to home, and they were lost en route, and that was it.
So did Allied U-boat Allied sub-action account for more tonnage of lost Axis shipping than the other way around? Did the U-boat, who sunk the most shipping?
U-boats sunk considerably more, because they were considering more in terms of the Mediterranean and in terms of British. But I think the American submariners sunk more than anything. I mean, if I remember right, it's something like the Japanese started with something like 6.5 million tons of shipping when they entered the war in December 1941. And by surrender in 1945, they had something like 340,000 tons left that they could use.
Bloody hell.
Yeah. They had on paper, they had something like 1.2 million tons, but only 340,000 tons of it was actually...
So 90% of their shipping.
Yeah, and it was all sunk by kind of largely, not entirely, but largely by American submarines. And US submarine warfare has just been completely forgotten in all the excitements of Iwo Jima and Saipan and Okinawa and Guadalcanal and everything. But it was absolutely amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing. I mean, you showed up that book the other day that we've both been sent, that lovely new book with all the stats and charts and graphs and stuff. There's a bit in that book, if I remember rightly, showing a graph of kind of Japanese shipping that's sunk. It is absolutely unbelievable. And there's got to be a great book to be done about all that. But I mean, the stranglehold of the American Navy, the submarine service and the US Navy on Japan did exactly what the U-boats were trying to do in the Atlantic but didn't.
Yeah. I mean,
it absolutely ground them to nothing. So by 1944, 87% of Japanese GDP is being processed into the war effort. 87%. You think what are we? We're like 2.5%, aren't we? 3% in the UK. I think the Americans are 3.5% or something.
Yeah.
Germany's like 1.8% or something feeble. 87%.
What percentage of the British economy, although it's hard to measure, isn't it, because it's the British Imperial and Dominions economy, but what percentage of the British economy is going to the war effort at the same time?
Wow, it's got to be kind of 20-25 or something, isn't it?
Yeah, but still,
you know,
not even close.
87% of everything. I mean, that is absolutely unbelievable. And the reason they're having to do that is because they're so desperate. So and this is where the impact of the atomic bombs really comes in. I mean, it's such a thorny one, but the Japanese they're so fucked by 1945. I mean, they just are. I mean, it's horrific, absolutely horrific, and it is superior industrialization. It is superior technology, but it is that complete war. It is air, land, and sea. It is B-29 super fortresses coming over and fire bombing cities. Relentlessly. It is the submarine war effort. It is the US Navy. It is the kind of it's that completeness of the Allied effort, led obviously dominantly by the Americans, but with huge contributions from the Royal Navy and the Australians as well. I mean, let's not keep them out of it.
Total stranglehold.
Total stranglehold, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, now our last question. Jim Bagnall asks, this is on a slightly smaller scale, how effective were SAS operations in France during and after Overlord, e.g. operations Houndsworth, Bullbasket, Luyton and Wallace and Hardy?
Yeah, I think they were pretty successful. I mean, they had some bad moments where they were caught, and there was one group that was caught and badly massacred. But by and large, they were pretty effective. I mean, what they were trying to do was go in. What the Allies did was they worked out what were the kind of key bits that we need, where it'd be really helpful to have some really good, effective resistance. And what they recognised was coming straight from Germany. So kind of in eastern France, that would be useful. So that's Houndsworth. From the south, from the sort of Limoges, Poitiers, Toulouse, that axis of advance straight north. Sort of Limoges, Poitiers, Le Mans, Rennes, straight up into Normandy. That would be great. And Brittany. And actually, 4th SAS is the French component, so they're French troops, and they go in. And their job is to go in and organise the local maquis, the local resistance, who are a bunch of kind of ill-trained kind of, outlaws, and get them into some kind of order and give them really firm directives about what they want to do, but also operate on their own as well. So do their own stuff. They need to boss the show, but they need to organise all those guys. And in all those three particular operations are all really successful. And actually, Bullbasket is an interesting one because I think it's I can't remember the guy who's in command of it. Bill Fraser's the one in I think he's Houndsworth. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. But so they learn, for example, that as Das Reich, the second Waffen SS Panzer Division, are moving north, they've got a big, there's a big sort of tranche of oil tankers on railways just north of Limoges, I think it is. And they found out about this on the 12th of June. And Das Reich really need this. This fuel has been sent specifically to fuel Das Reich on their movement north towards Normandy.
Yeah.
Bullbasket, the SAS guys, part of one SAS, find out about this. They radio through to the UK at about 2:30 in the afternoon, and at 6:30 in the evening, approximately, or just a matter of a few hours later, mosquitoes from RAF Bomber Command come over, shoot up every single one, and destroy them. Ha! And what that shows you is superiority on a number of different levels. Superior intelligence, superior technology, superior ability to use all three services. You've got clandestine forces behind enemy lines. You've got great intelligence. You've got firepower from the air. I mean, it's like tick, tick, tick.
And devolved decision making as well. So someone's able to make that decision without having to go to all the way up to the top of Scharfe. It's just like, yeah, absolutely, that's what you're there to do, which is a thing that the Allies are accused of not being very good at.
Yes,
is making snap decisions and making devolved decisions. You know, it was in fact quite
again,
clearly,
which is absolute nonsense. I mean, because they're perfectly capable of doing that, and obviously, as you can imagine, Das Reich are already not a very good mood. And it makes them even worse. I mean, you know, they don't, you know, they're so late to the party getting into Normandy, and that's one of the reasons. The other thing that's really interesting though is also about Brittany, because in Brittany, the resistance is really, really well organised, and what they want to do is they want to isolate German units around those ports. So San Malo and some of the others, and they want to just make sure that they are not able to kind of, you know, if they want to move up to Normandy, their life is going to be made absolute hell. And the French SS come in and organise it, and also I think Koenig actually gets parachuted in to kind of help organise it as well. He's in charge of Free French Forces, the guy who was the hero of Bir Hakeim that we talked about the other week, and again, it is really, really effective. But what is also really interesting is there are lots and lots of Maquis groups which don't get any support at all. And they're told that what's going to happen is they're going to get arms and, you know, on the signal they'll rise up and all the rest of it. And nothing happens. So, you know, and it is just chaos. And I read I can't remember if I mentioned this before or not, but, you know, the Maquis Surcouf, which is to the kind of eastern part of Normandy, you know, they get no help whatsoever. And from the moment of the invasion, they're listening in on their headsets, waiting for the BBC signal and all the rest of it. And they hear it and they know the invasion's coming and they're expecting arms drops literally every single day. And they never occur. And what follows is absolute chaos. I mean, it is brutal. As you know, they all start getting suspicious with one another. You know, they learn about some girl and apparently she's been sleeping with some Gestapo guy and she's a collaborator, so they decide to lynch her and hang her. And, you know, I mean, it's absolutely appalling, the kind of the circle of violence that breaks out.
Why were they left out? Were they not trusted?
Because the last thing the Allies want when they're suddenly breaking free to the east is lots of resistance types swanning around with Sten guns getting in the way. You know, it's absolutely, it is ruthless, the decision making. So all those places are places where, you know, Hounsworth, Bullbasket, 4th SAS in Brittany, they're all places where none of those operations can get in the way of the main drive of the Allies.
Yeah.
If they are, we're not interested. But they're not going to tell the resistors that. It's just
of
tough
course
shit.
They're not going to tell
them. It's just absolutely tough luck.
Wow. Well, there you go. I hope those questions have been duly answered. James, I think we've fought ourselves to a standstill. I'm calling for a ceasefire until next week.
Yeah, but thank you for listening, everyone. Hugely appreciated by both of us. It's a lot of fun to do this. Yeah. And don't forget, we're serving up a bump per month in September with lots of extra material. Operation Market Garden will be at the heart of it, a subject very close to Al's heart, but, you know, to be fair, mine as well. And perhaps the most revered British defeat of the entire war.
But will it be our bridge too far? No, it won't. Did he even say that? We don't know. Oh, for heaven's sake. See you next time.
Cheerio.